Good evening and welcome to this edition of Newsnight. My name is Charles Odongtho, and with me in the studio is old man of the clan, Andrew Mwenda. He is the CEO of The Independent. He's right here. Andrew, you're most welcome back.
Thank you.
How are you doing?
Very, very good.
Business is moving well?
I think so.
Have you been doing, by the way, in the country?
Business in the country, there's a huge business slump.
Why?
If you want to know how business is doing in the country, just look at the reportings by the banks at the end of the year.
What are they saying?
Standard Chartered Bank is writing off $120 billion of 120 billion shillings in non-performing loans. Crane Bank about
Bad
30
loans.
billion shillings, bad loans. I saw Crane Bank profits have fallen from about 105 billion to around 65 billion. They're going to publish the results. But I think Stanbic Bank profits down from 170 billion to around about 95. That is a huge slump. Now,
Do they have a common cause?
Yes, you see, if you have in 2010, the ratio of non-performing assets, total assets, was 1.76%. 1.76%.
What does that mean?
That means that the number of people who were defaulting on their loans, the value of the loans that were under default was 1.76%. That's very small.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, by last year, the total number of defaults could have exceeded 10%.
Out of how many? What fraction of
The
number of
total
population?
number of loans given out in Uganda, if I am not mistaken, is in excess of 10 trillion. It's about 15 trillion.
Different, that's
15
in amount.
trillion shillings is the amount of loans given out.
So the 1.7% is of that trillion.
At that time, now I'm saying it's 10%. So if it's 10%, that's 1.5 trillion cannot be paid back to the banks. That's why I'm saying that you'll find that a bank like the Standard Chartered Bank is rating off. I'm not sure.
Okay, we'll come down. Let's get the facts, maybe, probably, in the coming days, and then we'll discuss it. Because especially now that we are getting towards the budget, that's one of the most interesting topics
so
that
but
we
I
should
wanted to
discuss.
explain to you that the success...
Because today we should look at South Sudan, and time is running.
But we are coming, this will fit into South Sudan.
Are they connected?
Very much so,
Okay.
because you
tell
imagine...
us. Today we are looking at South Sudan.
Just
the
imagine,
conflict in South Sudan has gotten back and it is worse.
Yes.
What effect does it have?
Just imagine you are a company producing goods and South Sudan is an export market for you.
Yeah.
And possibly it takes 20 or 30 or 40% of your total output. You have borrowed money to finance expansion of your plant, and now you're exporting South Sudan. That market has now been lost. Perhaps it has declined by 90%. So you can no longer finance your loan. So you are into default. So Uganda was earning about $250 million.
The figures now show that it's about 57. It has plummeted down by over 80,000. I mean 80%.
80%, exactly.
To just about 57 or 51 billion per month.
Per month?
Yes, it is per month.
Per month, okay. Yeah. So if Uganda was exporting $250 million, you can imagine how many billion that is. Do you see? So right now, 50, that's about $20 million. So in a year, it's 240 million. It's still very high.
Okay, we are still going, since we don't have the figures yet, the definite figures, let's discuss the politics of this. Uganda committed itself...
I know you want to discuss the politics of it because you don't understand economics very well.
No, I can understand, especially when you explain the 10 trillion as against the 1%, I can understand that. But then because you don't have the definite figures for now, you're not sure as well, let's discuss the politics. Uganda committed itself to going into South Sudan and spending up to, I think, April. Today is the 23rd, right?
Yes.
Do you think Uganda is still going to come out?
They can't come out.
Why not?
I told you that if President Yoweri Museveni is not, if I'm not mistaken, Uganda is likely to have what we call an open-ended commitment in South Sudan. From the very beginning, I told you this. Why? We are getting involved in another people's civil war. A civil war is a very complex war. You know, international wars are very easy to end because combatants can retreat to their borders and settle. The problem with the civil war is they are fighting over the control of a government, and the power is a very attractive thing. So it tends to be a matter of life and death. Two, even when the war ends, the victors and the vanquished must live together in the same country. You see, whatever victory Salva Kiir will achieve, he will have to find accommodation with the people of
Riek
Machar and his supporters. He may not make peace with Riek Machar as an individual, but he will have to make peace with so many people who have been working with Riek Machar. That makes it very difficult. So compromise is very difficult because of the nature of the conflict, that it is internal and people are fighting together. Now you are an external agent, you go in and put in your army. The question you have to ask yourself is, how will Museveni and the UPDF measure success What is the measure of success?
I thought it
in
is
business we have something.
when they defeat the rebellion, they defeat Riek Machar.
What does
process.
defeating the rebellion mean?
You bring it down, then you force them to talk peace, like peace had been signed in January.
It has collapsed now.
It has collapsed.
You see,
maybe that is where.
But that's what I'm saying. When you say that you can defeat a rebellion, what does that mean? When the Americans went into Afghanistan,
like the Ugandans defeated Kony.
But you see, that was an internal fight within the Ugandans. When the United States went into Afghanistan, they defeated the Taliban, didn't they?
Yeah, true.
Isn't there civil war in Afghanistan?
It is continuing.
And Americans leaving when the Taliban are going to take over power.
Iraq.
In Iraq, then the Americans leave a civil war there. You see, it's very difficult for an external actor to come and end an internal civil war. So that is.
So tell us the solution. Tell us the solution, because we need to see a
solution.
Actually,
I don't think the solution.
As you
I
saw,
think
Andrew,
the solution
just let me give this background. It has gotten worse. The latest attack or recovering by the rebels of Bentiu has left over 300 people massacred, including in a mosque, in a hospital, and everybody's
but
wondering.
I should tell you, don't be deceived. Both sides are committing atrocities.
Oh yes,
so
I've not said.
It's
I've
not
not
one-sided.
any.
So, but let me tell you this. So why has this continued in spite of Ugandan troop presence there?
Because some people, some analysts are saying the Ugandans are actually defending maybe the oil wells. They are not actually engaging in what we have been told.
So how will Uganda measure the success of this? Because let me tell you, that conflict in South Sudan is primarily a political disagreement.
Yes.
Which the different actors in it have decided to express militarily.
True.
So the military component is the smaller part, because to resolve that conflict, I can tell you, you will have to have a kind of political settlement. You see, President Yoweri Museveni never defeated the Okellos militarily and established a political order. He defeated them militarily, yes. After defeating them militarily, he entered a form of political negotiation. He called the leaders of UPC, DP, and so many other political forces that were in Uganda, created a government of national unity. There was still resistance. And in this resistance, up to recently, Banya, Kolo, Kweyolo have been given UPDF uniforms, salaries, benefits, and everything, and integrated into the Ugandan army. So Museveni's strategy of ending insurgency has been to defeat the rebels militarily at the battlefield, and then negotiate a political settlement with them, whereby their commanders and soldiers are integrated into the army.
Then why don't you advise him
their political leaders
advise?
Can I finish my line of thought, please? Yes. Can I finish? So Museveni has historically integrated the commanders and soldiers into the UPDF, previously NRA, and the political leaders into the political establishment, has given ministries, they have become directors of boards, they have become ambassadors. That is a political negotiation. Salva Kiir will have to go into the same process. Now, now that Uganda is there, we can no longer mourn, it's there. How can Uganda get out? If you are Museveni, the one thing is you have to encourage Salva Kiir to find some level of political accommodation with those who disagree with him. And Salva Kiir has to be told that the solution to the problem of South Sudan has to be much more political than the one in Uganda, because he's incapable on his own of delivering a decisive military victory. I tell you, the president, I was able to get a chance to discuss this with him, has very strong reasons, which also convinced me that perhaps if I also was in his shoes, I would have intervened. This is what he told me. He said, hey, it was very possible that the rebels, that Riek Machar does not have effective control over those rebels. So they could have taken over Juba, and you have a fully-fledged Central African Republic situation. And then you have total chaos. Uganda has a lot of interest there already. We are saying that we export $250 million worth of goods. It's the largest destination of export. So now you are saying it's still high, because you're saying if they're exporting $57 billion per month, that is $20 million, more than $22 million a month. And it's 22 million times 12, it gives you about $256 billion. Which is $256 million. That's still a lot of money. Yeah. So that was an interest to protect. Another one is that perhaps it was not right to set a precedent of a democratically elected government being overthrown by rebels. Realize that in Africa the AU does no longer accepts coups and things like that. So there were strong reasons.
You say the OAU or African Union does no longer accepts that coups should be
a vehicle for changing
government. But why is it that it is only Uganda which is there militarily out of 53
And I'm told,
countries?
by the way, that Ethiopia is opposed to Ugandan presence there.
True.
So I just would like to know from the Ethiopian Prime Minister whether he thinks Uganda's initial entry was wrong or its stay is wrong. Sometimes you need to know the details of the argument the other party is making. My personal feeling at the very beginning was that the government of Uganda should have allowed Riek Machar to take over power, because it's better always to side with the strong against the weak. Because once a person secures a decisive military victory, he is now, the opponent is incapable of mounting a new resistance, and therefore would find that it is better for him to negotiate. But in this sense, Salva Kiir was the weaker party, whom we are propping. Riek Machar was the strong party. If you are Riek Machar feels Uganda has cheated me of victory. He will wait out until Ugandan troops leave at the end of March or May or whatever it is,
Wouldn't that
and then
have
attack.
boiled down to the kind of Rwanda situation in '94 where we had a fully fledged massacre?
And that is the other. So my argument was defeated by one thing when the president explained to me that in fact you are wrong to think that Riek Machar, if he achieved victory, he had the kind of effective control over the militias he was leading, the way Kagame had over the RPF, he had over the NRA. In other words, this is not a strong, a unified army with centralized command and control. It is not.
Well, that was Andrew Mwenda, old man of the clan, and this is Newsnight. My name is Charles Odongtho.